It was morning upon the hill, and the wind came softly from the sea. The sky held a pale light, neither gold nor white, but something between, a light that seemed to listen. Upon the slopes, the people gathered, their footsteps whispering through the grass. They had come from the towns and the villages, from the market roads and the fishing coves, drawn by a word that had passed from mouth to mouth. He speaks again upon the mountain, and so he did. Jesus, whom they called the Teacher, went up before them and sat upon a stone. The earth was still beneath his feet, his hands rested quietly upon his knees. Around him, the multitude settled into silence, and even the restless ones among them felt the weight of peace descend. The sea below gleamed, as if it too waited for his voice. The air trembled when he began to speak, not with thunder, but with gentleness that carried far. His words did not rise above them. They entered like breath. The weary lifted their eyes. The hopeful drew nearer. He spoke as one who had known both hunger and fullness, both night and day, and the people sensed that he uttered not what he had learned, but what he was. He said that the kingdom of heaven was near, not hidden behind the veil of death, nor locked in the halls of kings, but near as the beating of the heart. He said that the smallest soul, the most bruised and forgotten, was seen by the Father. Each word was a seed falling into the soil of their hearts, and the silence around him was like the hush before rain. Some among them were fishermen who had left their nets untended. Others were widows who'd come alone, carrying grief like a garment about their shoulders. There were shepherds, craftsmen, and those with nothing to offer but listening. And to each, his eyes turned with a quiet knowing, not of judgment, but of recognition, as if he had walked each road they had walked and borne the dust of every sorrow. He spoke not as a scribe, counting laws upon the fingers, but as one who saw the law fulfilled in love. Those who'd lived by rule felt their hearts bend toward freedom. Those who had wandered without rule felt the gentle hand of guidance. The words gathered like small rivers running together into one voice. Blessed are you. And though he had not yet said the blessings, they already trembled in the air. The wind stirred again, carrying the scent of wild herbs. A child coughed, and a mother hushed him softly. In that moment, all creation seemed drawn into stillness. Even the birds that circle the heights drifted lower, as though their wings wished to hear. The teacher lifted his gaze, and his eyes moved slowly across the faces before him. Faces of longing, of fear, of quiet devotion. Those who seek, he said, shall find. His voice carried not as sound alone, but as presence. It lingered within each heart that received it. The people did not yet know what they would hear, but something within them had already begun to change. Their worries loosened like knots undone by unseen hands. Their breathing deepened. They were being readied, and Jesus, seeing this, waited before continuing. The stillness deepened until even thought grew soft. The light shifted upon his face, and it seemed that the hill itself leaned closer to listen. Then he spoke the first blessing, and the world held its breath. But that word will come again in its time. For now, the people sit beneath the wide heaven, and the teacher's voice has only begun. The mountain, once a place of stones and soil, becomes a sanctuary of listening. And the hearts gathered there, like lamps before the dawn, begin to glow with quiet expectancy. If you're listening in peace tonight, share your city and the hour below. It's good to know who walks this quiet path together. And if you'd like, leave a short prayer in the comments. Someone, somewhere, will see it and pray with you." And he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The words drifted outward like ripples upon still water. They did not strike the ear as command, nor settle as doctrine. They entered the heart as something remembered, an echo from before time. The crowd leaned forward, and some lowered their eyes, uncertain, to speak of poverty, as blessing was to turn the world upside down. Yet as Jesus spoke, they felt the rightness of it, as if a hidden truth had quietly returned. He did not mean the beggar alone, nor only the destitute of bread. He meant those emptied of themselves, those who, finding no pride left to stand upon, had space enough for heaven to dwell within. Such souls carried a lightness the rich could not fathom, for they no longer guarded their worth as treasure, but as grace. The teacher's eyes moved over them, resting upon a man whose garments were thin and patched, upon a woman clutching her shawl against the breeze, upon a youth who stared at the ground in shame. "You are nearer to the heart of God than you know," his gaze seemed to say. And though he had spoken only once, the blessing lingered upon them like fragrance in the air. The sea below shimmered. A child's cry was lost upon the wind. One of the elders, who had walked far to hear him, whispered to another, "How can emptiness be fullness?" The teacher turned toward them, though no question had been spoken aloud, and replied gently, "Because what is full cannot receive." His words carried the hush of eternity. But the vessel that is empty is made ready. The heart that has nothing clings to the one who gives all. And it was as though light itself broke upon the meaning, not blinding, but clear, like dawn after long cloud. The poor in spirit were those who had ceased to claim ownership of their souls, who waited open-handed before the giver. And to them, he said, belonged the kingdom already. Not someday, not elsewhere, but now, wherever surrender and trust abide. Among the listeners, a fisherman bowed his head. He had lost his nets to the storm the week before, and his hands still smelled of the sea's salt. Hearing the teacher, he felt no shame for his lack. In that stillness, he perceived that even loss could become offering. And within that thought, peace settled like a bird upon his chest. Jesus watched the faces change, some softening, some awed, some uncertain, and his heart moved with compassion. For he knew that many would cling to their wealth of certainty, their abundance of self. Yet he also knew that heaven comes not to those who possess, but to those who yield. He said again, not to the multitude, but to the wind itself, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." The words drifted across the hillside, through olive and fig, down toward the distant villages where hearts waited to hear. And where they passed, peace followed, like light upon the water. A shepherd, leaning upon his staff, wept without sound. He did not know why. The tears came from a depth below thought, a spring opened by mercy. The teacher's blessing had found him in that hidden place, where no word but God's could enter. Others sat in silence, as if the world itself had grown hushed to listen. The air trembled softly. A leaf turned in the breeze. Jesus spoke no further for a time. He let the truth settle, patient as rain finding root. And within that pause, something unseen unfolded. A knowing that heaven is not a prize, but a presence. Not a gate in the clouds, but a nearness that comes to those who make room. To be poor in spirit was to stand unguarded before love, and to find that love enough. When the teacher lifted his eyes again, He saw understanding in some faces and longing in others. He smiled, the faintest trace of dawn across his countenance, and said quietly, "You have heard this blessing. Keep it within you, for the kingdom is nearer than you believe." The multitude breathed again, as if released from some invisible weight. The sound of the sea returned, and the light upon the hillside warmed. They did not yet know there would be other blessings, words of mourning, mercy, peace, and righteousness. But this first had already begun its work. It had opened the door within the heart where heaven enters. And after these things, Jesus remained silent a little while, as though listening to the Father's still voice that moves beneath all words. The people did not leave. They waited, and the wind whispered through the grass. When he next spoke, it would be to those who mourned, for they too were part of the blessed company. And again he spoke, and his voice was like water over stone. "Blessed are those who mourn," said Jesus, "for they shall be comforted." The words moved through the crowd like a low wind over fields. They brushed against every heart that had ever known loss, and the sound of quiet weeping rose among them, not of despair, but of recognition. For all had mourned something: a life departed, a love undone, a hope delayed. And yet, to hear that such mourning could be blessed was a wonder beyond their grasp. The teacher's eyes lifted toward the horizon, where the line between sea and sky trembled in light. "There is a sorrow that draws heaven near," he said softly. "Not the sorrow that closes the heart, but the sorrow that opens it wide to love. For in that opening, the Comforter comes." He spoke as one who had wept himself, at gravesides, in lonely places, and over the hardness of human hearts. Those who watched him could see it in his gaze, a knowing deeper than speech. He did not speak of grief as something to be escaped, but as something through which the soul is purified, like gold in the fire of mercy. The people listened. Some bowed their heads. One woman clutched her shawl and trembled. She had buried her child that spring, and the wound was still raw as the day it came. Yet as the teacher spoke, her breath steadied. A warmth, faint but certain, began to rise within her chest. She did not understand it, but she knew she was not alone. "Blessed are those who mourn," he said again. "For the Father who sees in secret gathers every tear. None fall unnoticed, none are wasted. Each sorrow is a door through which compassion enters." His gaze turned toward the woman, though he did not call her by name. "The tears you have shed," he continued, "are not lost. They have watered the roots of mercy." The silence that followed was deep, and the people felt it, as one feels the nearness of rain. The mountain itself seemed to breathe with them. They began to see that the teacher's words were not promises for another life only, but revelations of what heaven was already doing upon the earth, even in grief, even in pain. For the comfort he spoke of was not merely the easing of sorrow, but the presence of God within it, the touch that turns mourning into tenderness, loss into compassion, longing into prayer. The comfort was not of forgetting, but of remembering rightly that love is stronger than death, and the heart broken for love's sake is not destroyed, but remade. A young man, standing near the back, had come from the city to test this Galilean. He had seen many teachers, heard many words, yet as he watched the people listen, he felt his pride waver. He thought of his own mother, gone these many years, and how he had sealed her memory away to keep from pain. Now he felt that seal loosen. The sorrow he had buried returned. but not to crush him. It returned as a light within the ache. He covered his face and wept. The teacher did not speak again for a while. He let the sound of mourning become its own prayer. The weeping of the people rose and fell like the sea, and through that sound, comfort indeed began to move. Not as miracle or spectacle, but as quiet presence. Hearts were being mended in ways unseen. After some time, Jesus lifted his eyes once more. "There is a mourning that is not despair," he said. "It is the mourning that looks toward hope. For love that grieves is love that still believes." He paused, and his gaze seemed to stretch beyond them, to every soul who would ever weep. "And I tell you the truth," he added gently, "the Comforter will come, and your sorrow will be turned to joy." The people felt the words settle over them like evening light. Some smiled through their tears. Others simply closed their eyes and breathed. The ache within them had not vanished, but it had changed, softened, sanctified, made holy in its endurance. They understood, perhaps for the first time, that to mourn was not to be forsaken. It was to share in the tenderness of the one who mourned for the world. The teacher stood, letting his robe move with the breeze, and the crowd followed his gaze to the open sky. "The tears of the faithful," he said quietly, "are not a river of sorrow, but a spring of life. For from them grows the tree of compassion, whose fruit is comfort." And the people bowed their heads again, for they felt the truth of it. Their hearts had become that tree, rooted in pain, yet reaching upward toward light. After these things, the sun shifted, and the long shadows on the hillside grew gentle. The weeping turned to stillness, and in that stillness, peace found them, not as escape, but as embrace. The teacher looked upon them with love, and knew the next blessing would follow as naturally as breath. The blessing of the meek, who carry the quiet strength of heaven. And after the weeping had grown still, Jesus spoke again, his voice low and steady like wind among the reeds. "Blessed are the meek," he said, "for they shall inherit the earth." Those who heard it did not at once understand. To inherit the earth was a promise they had long associated with the strong, those who could claim and guard, who could lead armies or shape nations. Yet the teacher spoke not of conquest, but of gentleness, and it unsettled the proud and quieted the weary. He looked toward the hillside where sheep grazed in the distance, their shepherd guiding them with staff and tone. "The meek," he said, "are not the timid, nor those without voice. They are the ones who hold their strength in peace. Their power is patience. Their victory is endurance." The people watched him as he turned his eyes to the stones at his feet, then lifted them to the sky. "When the storm comes," he continued, "the great trees break, but the reeds by the river bow and rise again. So it is with those who are gentle before God. They do not strive for their place. They are given it." A murmur moved through the crowd, some in wonder, some in quiet debate. One man, a laborer with heavy arms and rough hands, frowned as he listened. "How shall meekness claim the earth?" he muttered. "When the bold take it by force." The teacher heard, though no word was called to him. He turned to the man and said with calm, "The earth that the bold take, they cannot keep. It is the dust that slips through the clenched hand, but the earth given to the meek is not seized. It is entrusted, for they live in harmony with its breath and its soil, and the world itself delights to belong to them." The man fell silent, and the strength in his shoulders softened. He felt as though the wind itself had touched him, not to challenge, but to bless. Jesus' gaze swept again across the gathering. "The Father gives the world not to the proud," he said, "but to the humble, to those who walk softly upon it, whose hearts mirror his peace." He paused, and the silence deepened. "Do you not see? The meek are the ones who make room for heaven to rest upon the earth." The listeners could feel it now, that the meekness he described was not weakness, but a steadiness beyond striving. It was the stillness that remains when anger has fallen away, the courage that refuses to strike back, the patience that outlasts the storm. They felt it as something both beautiful and hard, like light breaking through mist. At the edge of the crowd, a Roman soldier watched from afar, drawn by the strange stillness that gathered around the teacher. He had seen power in many forms: the sword, the order, the march of empire. Yet none held the quiet authority of this man who spoke of meekness. He did not step forward, but something in him shifted, like iron warming in the sun. The teacher spoke again. "The meek inherit the earth because they have learned its song. They know when to speak and when to listen, when to stand and when to bow. They do not tear the world to possess it. They love it into peace." His eyes glowed with a light that seemed both sorrowful and full of promise. "And such love," he said, "is stronger than all the kingdoms men build." A child, sitting close to his feet, reached out and touched the hem of his robe. Jesus looked down and smiled, placing a hand upon the child's head. "To be meek," he said softly, "is to be like this little one, trusting, unafraid, content in the Father's care." The child gazed up at him, and for a moment every heart gathered there understood. The breeze rose, carrying the scent of dust and salt from the sea. The crowd remained still, listening not only to his words, but to the quiet between them. That silence where truth often dwells. And within that silence, something began to change. Hearts that once desired power began to long for peace. Hands that clenched with fear began to rest open upon their knees. Jesus stood, his robe stirring with the wind. "The meek shall inherit the earth," he repeated, "because they alone can keep it whole." He turned his face toward the sea, and the light fell across his brow. "They will till it without greed, guard it without pride, and walk upon it without harm. The earth is safe in their hands." The multitude breathed as one. Some smiled faintly, some wept without knowing why. They had come to hear of kingdoms, but had found instead the secret of stillness. And the mountain, warmed by afternoon light, seemed to shine with quiet approval. Then the teacher looked once more at those gathered before him and said, "And blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." His words hung like promise and hunger both, a summons to those who longed for truth as for daily bread. The people leaned in once again, for they felt that the next words would feed their souls. And the teacher, standing in the warmth of the afternoon, lifted his hands slightly, palms open to the sky. His eyes were clear, and his voice carried the tone of promise and invitation. "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness," he said, "for they shall be filled." The words stirred through the gathering like wind among fields ready for harvest. Some there had known the ache of empty stomachs, the long nights of want. Others had felt a different hunger, the soul's longing for truth, for justice, for a world made whole. Jesus spoke to both, and to something deeper that bound them, the yearning for God himself. He did not speak of righteousness as law alone, nor as the pride of the pious. He spoke of a hunger that was holy, a desire born not from lack, but from love. The Father blesses those who long for what is right, he said, for their longing is the heartbeat of heaven upon the earth. And when the time is full, they shall be satisfied, not with bread alone, but with the goodness they have sought. A young woman, thin from fasting, pressed her hands together as she listened. She had spent years striving to please God through rule and ritual, yet peace had eluded her. Now she heard something different in his words. Not striving, but thirst. A thirst meant to be quenched, not punished. Tears filled her eyes, for she felt her efforts turn into prayer. Jesus looked upon her, and upon many others whose faces bore the lines of weary discipline. Those who hunger for righteousness, he said, shall not be turned away. The Father sees their longing and will fill it with himself. For righteousness is not earned, it is given. It is love made visible, truth made flesh. The listeners fell silent. Some gazed toward the horizon where the sea caught the sunlight. Others bowed their heads, letting his words sink in. They began to sense that hunger was not their enemy but their calling, that yearning for God was itself a sign of his nearness. Then Jesus knelt and drew a small circle in the dust with his finger. "See," he said, "how the earth receives the rain. It does not demand, it opens. So must the heart open to the righteousness it seeks." He looked up at them, and the faintest smile crossed his lips. "The soul that thirsts shall drink deeply, and the hunger that aches for good shall find its feast in me." His words hung in the air, quiet but vast. Some did not yet understand. How could righteousness be a feast, and he its bread? Yet their hearts, though unsure, leaned toward faith, like flowers turning toward the sun. One of the elders spoke softly to his neighbor. "He speaks of fulfillment, but not as we have known it. It is as if the law itself has become a river, and he the water." The neighbor nodded, unable to answer, for both men felt within them a stirring they could not name, a satisfaction that came not after effort, but within longing itself. Jesus rose again, his robe brushing against the grass. "Hunger and thirst are gifts," he said. "They keep the heart awake. The full may forget to seek, but the hungry remember the giver." His eyes lifted heavenward, and those who seek will find that God himself is the portion of their soul. The crowd was still, their faces softened by wonder. Around them, the day waned, and the sun drew a golden path across the water. Even the restless children sat quietly, as if the very air had become prayer. One man whispered, "I do not know if I am righteous." The teacher turned toward him and said, "Then you are blessed, for you hunger still." At this, a wave of understanding moved through them like light. They saw that it was not perfection that drew God near, but desire, the honest ache of a heart that yearns for what is holy. And many felt a quiet joy rise within, like the first taste of cool water after drought. The teacher's gaze softened as he looked upon them, knowing that this longing would one day lead them to greater truths, that the hunger he awakened would not pass until fulfilled in the love of the Father. "Those who thirst for righteousness," he said again, "shall be filled. For righteousness is not far, it walks among you, and the bread of heaven is already breaking." The last light of day settled upon the mountain, and the sea mirrored it in gold and rose. The people sat bathed in its glow, their hearts warm, their spirits stirred. They were not full, but they were no longer empty. And in that holy in-between, Jesus let silence fall once more. He knew that this hunger was the doorway to mercy, and that soon the next blessing would rise like dawn. For those who give mercy shall receive it in return. When the last murmur of the crowd had quieted, Jesus looked among them and spoke once more. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. The sound of his voice carried softly down the slope, and the words seemed to rest upon each soul like dew upon grass. Mercy, a word so simple, yet so vast that the people felt its meaning unfold within them as he spoke. For many had lived by judgment, and few had been told that compassion could be a crown. He paused, letting the stillness deepen. The merciful, he said, are those who see beyond the wound. They forgive because they remember the mercy they have received. Their hearts do not harden when they are wronged, but open wider, that the Father's kindness may flow through them. And those who heard him understood that this was no small command. Mercy was not the path of the strong, nor the instinct of the proud. It was the narrow way of those who remembered love, even in the face of injury. A woman in the crowd drew her cloak closer. She had come with bitterness buried deep in her chest. Wronged by a neighbor, shamed in her small village. Her anger had been her armor. Yet as she listened, that armor began to crack. When he spoke of mercy as a mirror of heaven, she felt her heart tremble. It was as if she were standing before clear water and saw her reflection both wounded and healed. Jesus turned toward her, though she had not spoken. You who have been hurt, he said gently, do not carry the weight forever. For mercy is the breath of God within the soul. When you forgive, you breathe with his breath. His gaze moved beyond her to the multitude. Those who forgive open the gates of heaven within themselves, and those who close their hearts against others close them also to the mercy that would heal their own. A murmur ran through the people. Some nodded, others looked away, for they knew how hard such forgiveness could be. Yet the teacher did not lessen his words. His mercy was not softness, but strength. The strength to let go of vengeance, to yield the heart where wrath would rule. The merciful, he continued, are like rivers that cleanse the land. They do not keep what they receive. They pour it out, and by that pouring, they are made pure. He lifted his hand toward the sea. See how it accepts every stream, every current, salt and sweet alike, and still remains vast. So is the heart that forgives. The light fell golden upon his face, and the air felt newly washed, as though the very word mercy had cleansed it. The people looked at one another differently, the merchant at the debtor, the husband at the wife, the stranger at the friend. Something unseen began to soften between them. Then he spoke again, quieter still. To show mercy is not to forget justice, he said, but to let love guide it. For judgment without mercy is a blade, and mercy without truth is a shadow. But when the two walk together, the kingdom is near. The crowd listened as one breath. They began to feel that mercy was not only an act toward others, but a grace that healed the giver. Those who forgave would themselves be forgiven. Those who lifted the fallen would find themselves lifted in turn. Heaven moved through mercy, as light through clear water, flowing both ways, unseen yet real. An old man, stooped and trembling, rose from where he sat. His son had left him years before, taking his inheritance and vanishing to a distant land. He had long sworn never to forgive. Yet now, as the teacher spoke, his heart ached with sudden clarity. He fell to his knees and whispered, "Lord, if I forgive him, will he ever know?" Jesus turned toward him and said, "Your mercy will find him. even if your words do not. For the Father gathers every act of compassion and carries it where it must go." The man wept, his tears falling into the dust like seeds, and those who saw knew that mercy had already borne fruit. The teacher then fell silent again. The breeze stirred, the birds wheeled above, and the scent of wild thyme drifted down from the ridge. The people felt the peace that mercy brings, not a peace of ease, but of release. Their burdens had shifted, unseen but real. And when he spoke again, his words came like light through morning mist. "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." The sound of it lifted the people from their sorrow and drew their eyes upward, towards something higher than forgiveness, the clarity of the heart itself. The air was clear upon the hill when he spoke again. The crowd had fallen utterly silent, their hearts opened by mercy's touch. Jesus lifted his eyes to the horizon, where the sea glowed faintly beneath the sun, and said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." The words fell like light itself, simple, weightless, yet piercing. None among them moved for a long while. It was as though the earth had hushed to listen. The promise was greater than any they had heard. To see God, not through veil or symbol, not in temple shadow or thundered law, but face to face. As morning sees the dawn, he turned to them, his gaze deep and kind. "The pure in heart," he said, "are not those without fault, but those without guile. They do not seek to appear righteous. They are content to be true. Their hearts are clear like still water, and in that clarity, heaven is reflected." A few shifted uneasily, for many had spent their lives cleansing the outward things, washing hands, offering sacrifice, speaking the right words. But he spoke of something hidden, a purity no ritual could make. It was the purity of motive, of quiet love, of a heart that desired God more than the praise of men. A young scribe raised his hand and said softly, "Master, who can be pure in such a way? For even the righteous stumble in thought." Jesus turned to him and replied, "The heart becomes pure when it returns to love, when it forgives itself and others, when it seeks no gain in goodness, when it looks to the Father not as judge but as light. Purity is not perfection. It is transparency. It is the soul unhidden." The scribe bowed his head, and something in his sternness melted. Jesus continued, "The pure in heart see God, because nothing stands between. They do not make idols of fear or pride. They look upon the world and find the Father's face in all that lives. They see him in the poor, in the sorrowful, in the meek, in the merciful, in the eyes of those whom others overlook." His voice softened. To see God is not to gaze into heaven, but to recognize him in the simple act, the humble breath, the light upon another's brow. A child laughed suddenly, chasing a grasshopper through the dust. The sound carried up to them, clear and bright. Jesus smiled and said, "There, that is purity. The heart that delights in what is given, that finds wonder in the small and the plain. Such a heart has seen God already." The crowd smiled too, and for a moment joy moved through them, like sunlight through leaves. They felt lighter, as if the world had grown more transparent, as though, behind every face, something holy had begun to shine. But the teacher's tone grew solemn once more. "Guard your hearts," he said, "for the world will seek to stain them. Keep watch over what you love. The heart is the lamp of the body. If it is clear, all within is filled with light. But if the heart darkens, even brightness becomes shadow." The people listened, and many wept quietly, not from fear, but from the desire to be clean again. to see as they once saw, before life's dust had settled upon them. Jesus stepped down from the stone where he had sat, moving among them slowly. The people parted, unsure whether to bow or reach toward him. He passed them gently, his robe brushing the grass. Wherever he walked, it seemed the air itself grew clear. Some said later that the very light around him deepened, though none could say how. A mother held her infant closer and whispered, "Is he not what he speaks?" And an old man beside her nodded. For in the teacher's calm, they saw the purity he described, the still heart that saw God and revealed him in return. When he had returned to his place, he lifted his face toward the sea once more and said, "Blessed are those whose hearts remain clear in the midst of strife, for they shall be called peacemakers." His gaze lingered on the people, as though he saw the path ahead, the quarrels to come, the world still aching to divide itself. The pure heart, he added softly, gives birth to peace. And with that, he fell silent again, and the crowd felt within themselves the first stirrings of that blessed peace he foretold. A calm that was not of this world, yet had already entered it through him. And when the stillness had ripened like fruit upon the branch, Jesus spoke again. "Blessed are the peacemakers," he said, "for they shall be called the children of God." The words flowed softly, yet they carried the strength of mountains. The people leaned nearer, their hearts hushed beneath the weight of them. For many there had lived long years in the shadow of quarrel, between kin, between neighbor, between nations. They knew the cost of anger, yet few had known the way of peace. "The peacemakers," said Jesus, "are those who walk into the storm and bring the calm with them. They do not add voice to the shouting, nor blade to the battle. They carry another kind of power, the power to still." He paused, and the wind settled as though obeying his very breath. "To make peace," he continued, "is not to turn away from truth, but to let truth and love meet as one. The peace of the Father is not the silence of fear, it is the stillness born of trust. Those who carry it bear his likeness and are rightly called his children." He looked over the hillside and saw men who had fought and others who had lost sons to fighting. He saw women whose hearts had grown weary of bitterness. To them he said, "When you make peace, you do the work of your Father in heaven. For he, too, mends what has been broken and gathers what the world scatters." An old man lifted his hand and asked, "Lord, how can we make peace in a world that loves the sword?" Jesus turned to him with compassion. "Begin with the heart," he said. "Where anger is tamed, the battle ends. Where forgiveness lives, the enemy becomes brother. The peace you sow within will bloom beyond you." And as he spoke, many felt the truth of it stir within their souls. That the peace of God does not wait for kings or decrees. It begins in the quiet surrender of one heart willing to forgive. He told them then a small parable. A man went out to the field to plant seed, but his hand trembled with wrath, and the seed fell upon stones. Nothing grew. The next day he went again, his anger stilled and his hand steady. The same field, the same seed. Yet now the earth received it and bore fruit. So it is with peace. The soil of the heart must be soft. At this, the people murmured, some with tears, for they had seen their own fields, the ruined friendships, the years spent in resentment. They saw how much had withered through anger. Then he said, "The world speaks of victory as conquest, but I tell you, true victory is reconciliation. For when love overcomes hatred, the war ends forever." His gaze grew distant, as though he beheld something beyond their sight. Perhaps the long road of suffering yet to come, where he himself would make peace through pain. The air grew cool, and a bird called out from the rocks. "The children of God," he said, "are known not by might, but by gentleness. They are those who bring quiet where there is strife, light where there is shadow. When they enter a house, peace enters with them. When they depart, peace remains behind." A fisherman at the edge of the crowd bowed his head and whispered, "Lord, let me be such a man." He felt within him the memory of harsh words and broken nets, and suddenly longed to mend both. Jesus looked upon him and said, "Then begin now. Speak peace with your tongue, and let your hands follow." And so the lesson sank deep into the hearts of all who listened. They saw that peacemaking was not the work of kings, but the calling of each soul. Even those who could not yet forgive began to desire it, and that desire itself became a small beginning of peace. The teacher's voice softened, and he said once more, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." The words lingered like incense in the air. They carried warmth and promise, the echo of a home not yet seen but already known. And as the people sat in silence, the light of the afternoon began to wane, and a shadow of tenderness passed over the crowd, for they understood that the way of peace was not without cost. Those who brought peace into the world would often suffer for it. And so the teacher's next words rose naturally, like a wave that follows the tide. "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The people drew breath as one, knowing this blessing would be both sorrow and strength. The wind shifted as Jesus spoke the next blessing, his tone quiet but unshaken. "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The crowd fell still again. The words hung heavy, yet somehow luminous, a promise wrapped in sorrow. For those who followed him already knew the bitterness of scorn. They had felt the weight of ridicule, the cold eye of authority, the ache of being outcast. Yet none had ever heard suffering named as a crown. Jesus looked upon them, fishermen, farmers, widows, wanderers, and his gaze was both tender and fierce. "The world will strike against the light," he said, "for it does not understand its warmth. But those who stand in truth, though the night press upon them, already walk in the dawn." He paused and knelt upon the ground, tracing a line in the dust. "When you choose what is right, and the world calls it wrong," he said, "rejoice. The kingdom has drawn near, for every wound suffered in love becomes a doorway for grace." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some whispered to one another in wonder, some in fear. One young man asked, "Master, will the righteous not be protected?" Jesus lifted his face to him, and the sadness in his smile was deep. "They will be protected," he said, "but not always from pain, rather from despair. The Father will not spare them the trial, but he will walk within it, and his presence is greater than safety." A silence followed that felt like prayer. The listeners could sense that the teacher spoke not of distant theory, but of something he himself would endure. His words bore the weight of foreknowledge, and his eyes held the quiet resolve of one who had already chosen the cross long before wood and nail. He rose and looked over the crowd once more. "The prophets before you," he said, "were mocked, driven out, slain. Yet their blood watered the soil from which faith has grown. You walk their road, the narrow road, and its end is not defeat but glory." He let his hand fall open, as though releasing something unseen. "The world may take your name," he said, "but it cannot take your light. The world may silence your voice, but it cannot quiet the song of heaven that sings within you. The world may strike your body, but it cannot touch your soul." His words seemed to pierce the air itself, cutting through the heaviness of fear. The people felt the weight lift slightly, replaced by an almost holy courage. Even the timid began to believe that righteousness was not frailty, but strength hidden within surrender. Then Jesus spoke again, his tone more intimate now, as if to each heart alone. "Blessed are you when they revile you, when they mock and speak evil against you for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven." His words carried not triumph, but serenity, the joy of one who knows the secret victory of love. A woman near the front, her face worn with years of exile, pressed her hands together. She had been cast out from her family for her faith, yet now she felt her shame turn to light. Tears traced her cheeks as she whispered, "Then I am blessed." Jesus heard her, though the crowd was wide, and said gently, "Yes, you are. For heaven recognizes the wounds of love and calls them beautiful." A breeze moved through the assembly, and the grass bent low, as though the earth itself bowed in reverence. The people felt a solemn joy rising among them, not laughter, but a quiet strength that would not break. They saw in his face the calm of one already victorious, and they understood that this path, though narrow, led home. "The kingdom of heaven," he said again, "belongs to those who suffer for what is good. The pain of such hearts is the pulse of eternity." And then, lifting his eyes toward the fading light, he added, "Do not fear the world. Its power ends where love begins. You are the salt of the earth, and without you, the world would lose its savor." The people listened, the shift of his teaching unfolding like dawn upon the water. The next words would speak not of sorrow, but of purpose, what it meant to live as bearers of his light within a darkened world. And Jesus lifted his face toward the horizon, where the first veil of evening lay upon the sea, and he said, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its savor, how shall it be made salty again?" The people stirred, their hearts still tender from the blessing of those who suffer. They listened as his voice moved across the hillside like steady rain. "You are the salt," he said again, "for through you the world is kept from decay. The good you do, the mercy you show, the truth you hold, these are the savor that keeps life from losing its taste." He took a handful of earth and let it fall slowly between his fingers. "See," he said, "how the dust returns to dust. Yet the salt endures, unseen but preserving. So it is with the children of God. They remain where the world would fade, keeping what is good from vanishing." The crowd fell quiet, for they understood this was not praise alone, but calling. To be salt was to serve without glory, to lose oneself that others might live, and yet there was joy in it. The joy of knowing one's life was flavor in the hands of heaven. "Let your lives season the earth," he said. "Let kindness mend bitterness. Let truth cleanse falsehood. Let love preserve what hatred would spoil. And if you would keep your savor, remain near to the Father, for he is the source of all taste and light." Then Jesus turned his gaze toward the fading light of the sea. The first lamps in the villages below were being lit, one by one. "You are the light of the world," he said, and his words glowed with quiet wonder. "A city set upon a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do men light a lamp and place it under a vessel, but upon a stand, that it may give light to all within the house. He paused, and the people could feel the truth of it, that the same God who had kindled stars had kindled their souls as lamps for the world. Let your light so shine before others, he said, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. At this, the hearts of the listeners swelled with both fear and awe. They had seen themselves as small, unworthy, fragile, yet here the teacher called them bearers of divine light. Not rulers, not priests, but fishermen and widows, shepherds and children. Through them, heaven would gleam upon the earth. One man whispered, "Lord, what if my flame is faint?" Jesus turned toward him and replied, "Then tend it with love, and it will grow. Even a spark held in faith can guide the lost through darkness." The crowd fell still again, many weeping quietly, for they saw themselves as he saw them, not as scattered souls, but as the gathered lights of one great lamp. Then Jesus raised his hand and said, "Do not think that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have not come to destroy, but to fulfill." His voice deepened, and the people knew that something greater was being revealed. Until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one mark shall fall from the law until all is complete. The air grew still as his words settled upon them. He had not cast away what was old. He had lifted it towards what was eternal. "Whoever does and teaches these things," he said, "shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. But I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you shall not enter it." A murmur passed through the crowd. Not fear, but wonder. For he spoke not of stricter rules, but of deeper truth, of a goodness that begins within the heart. Jesus' eyes softened, and he looked upon them as a shepherd upon his flock. "The law is light," he said, "but love is the flame that gives it meaning. Keep the one, and you will fulfill the other." He stepped back then, letting silence gather. The people felt as though the very mountain had become a temple, and the teacher its living word. The light of day dimmed. A star trembled above the horizon. The multitude lingered still, unwilling to move. Their hearts kindled with the savor of his words and the glow of his call. And as the last light faded, the teacher spoke again, his voice low and steady in the growing dusk. "You have heard it said to those of old, 'You shall not kill.' But I tell you, whoever is angry without cause is already near the edge of that shadow." The lesson turned inward again, from the world's keeping to the heart's. The law would be fulfilled not in command alone, but in the quiet transformation of the soul. And Jesus said to them, "Do not think that I have come to set aside the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill." The words echoed softly through the fading light, and those who heard them felt the air grow solemn. The law was the heart of their father's faith, written in stone, guarded in temple and scroll, recited through generations. Yet the teacher spoke of something deeper, something that breathed beneath the letter. He stood upon the hill, the wind drawing his robe about him, and continued, "Until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter, not even the stroke of a pen, shall disappear from the law until all is accomplished." His voice was calm, but its calm held authority, and many among them wondered what he meant. For some feared that he would cast away what was holy, others hoped he would. Yet he spoke not to overthrow, but to reveal, not to loosen the ancient word, but to complete it in love. The law was given, he said, that the heart might learn to love rightly, But love is the life within the law. Without it, the words are as stones that cannot speak. He turned his gaze upon the crowd, and they felt as though he looked into the hidden places of each soul. "You have heard it said," he continued, "you shall not kill. But I tell you, whoever is angry with his brother without cause is already near the shadow of death. And whoever says, 'You fool,' has kindled the fire of judgment within himself." The crowd was silent. The words were sharper than any sword, yet spoken with gentleness. They saw that he was not condemning them, but calling them inward, from the outer wall of obedience to the inner sanctuary of grace. "The commandment is not a fence," he said, "but a doorway. Walk through it, and you will find life. Keep it only in form, and it will bind you, but keep it in love, and it will set you free." He knelt then and drew upon the ground with his hand, as though tracing the path of the law from stone to heart. "If you bring your gift to the altar," he said, "and remember there that your brother has something against you, leave your gift before the altar. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come offer your gift." He looked up, and his eyes held the reflection of the sea. "The Father delights more in peace than in offering. He who reconciles has fulfilled more than the command. He has mirrored heaven itself." Among the crowd, two men who had quarreled for years met each other's eyes and looked away, then back again. A quiet understanding passed between them. Without a word, one laid his hand upon the other's shoulder, and they both wept. The teacher saw and smiled. "You have heard it said," he continued, "an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, resist not the evil done to you. If any strike you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. And if they take your cloak, give them your coat as well." The people murmured, for it was a hard saying. Yet his voice was steady and filled with compassion. "For love, fulfilled is not vengeance," he said, "but mercy that overcomes." He rose then, and the wind lifted gently through the grass. "Whoever shall do and teach these things," he said, "shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." His eyes swept over them with quiet affection. "But I say to you, let your righteousness exceed that of the scribes and the Pharisees. Let it be the righteousness of the heart, not of display. For the Father who sees in secret shall reward in secret." The crowd listened in awe. They saw now that the teacher's fulfillment was not the ending of the law, but its flowering, the ancient seed blooming into grace. He spoke once more, and his tone softened like evening light upon water. "Do not fear what is new, for it is not new. The same word that was written in stone is now written upon the living heart." And as the people pondered this, they began to feel within themselves a stirring, that holiness was not distant, not reserved for priests or elders, but present in the very act of love. Jesus looked out upon the sea one last time before silence fell. "You have heard much," he said. "Now hear this. Every command finds its life in compassion. Without love, the law is empty. With love, it is complete." And as the last light faded into the quiet of evening, his next words came as softly as prayer. "You have heard it said to those of old, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you, whoever looks with lust has already wandered from purity within the heart." The night deepened, and the flame of his teaching burned brighter still. And again the teacher spoke, his voice like a low fire steady against the dusk. "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you, whoever looks upon another with lust in his heart has already broken the covenant within. The people grew quiet, uneasy, for the words pierced where no eye could see, dividing thought from intention. Yet the tone of his voice held no harshness. It was the voice of one who knew the heart's frailty and still loved it. "The sin," he said softly, "is not only in the act, but in the desire that forgets love. The body follows where the heart has already turned. Guard, therefore, the inward gaze, that it may look with purity and not possession." A hush settled upon them, and the wind stirred through the olive trees above. He continued, "If your right eye causes you to stumble, turn it from what tempts it. If your hand draws you astray, withdraw it from harm. Better to lose what leads to ruin than to let the soul itself be darkened." He paused, and the people understood that he spoke not of flesh to be torn, but of will to be disciplined, that the heart must learn the art of release. "The eye," he said, "was made to see beauty, not to consume it. The hand was made to bless, not to grasp. When you see with love, you see as the Father sees. And when you touch in kindness, the kingdom draws near." The crowd's unease began to soften, for they felt that his teaching was not a prison, but a cleansing. He did not condemn desire. He called it home, back to its rightful place within love. Then he spoke of faithfulness, of vows, of the sacredness of joining one life to another. "You have heard," he said, "that it was permitted to give a writing of divorce. But I tell you, the heart was never meant to be divided. From the beginning, the two were one flesh, one breath, one promise beneath heaven's gaze. What God has joined, let no one sever in anger or convenience." A woman near the front, veiled and weary, drew a slow breath. She had been abandoned by her husband, left with children and debt. Her heart had hardened like the ground in drought. Yet as Jesus spoke, she felt something stir again. Not bitterness, but the faint echo of hope. She wept, not because she was condemned, but because she was seen. And Jesus' eyes, full of light, met hers. "The Father knows the sorrows of those betrayed," he said. "He's near to the broken vow. But I tell you this also, let forgiveness be stronger than anger, for the bond of love is greater than the wound of loss." The people listened, hearts heavy yet strangely healed. For his teaching didn't shatter them, it mended. Where they had expected law, he gave restoration. Where they expected demand, he gave direction. He spoke then of truth itself. "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths before God.' But I say to you, swear not at all. Let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything more than this springs from confusion, not faith." He looked over the assembly, his eyes gentle but firm. "Do you see? The Father needs no great words to believe you. He listens to the heart, not to the tongue. Speak with simplicity, and your speech will be clean as running water." The listeners nodded slowly. They began to see how each command turned not toward burden, but toward freedom. The purity he spoke of was not sterile. It was clear, like the sky after rain. Jesus stood quietly for a time, letting the meaning of his words settle like seed in soft soil. The wind fell still, and the sound of waves reached them faintly from below. Then he said, "The law, once written upon stone, has found its dwelling in the heart. The faithful do not obey from fear, but from love. And where love rules, no law is needed." He lifted his face toward the dimming sky. "Keep your hearts pure," he said, "and your words true. Let your love be whole, and your anger brief. In this is righteousness fulfilled, not by decree, but by the living breath of compassion. The people watched him, their faces touched by the last gold of the day. They felt that the night would come soon, but it would not be dark. Something within them now shone with quiet clarity. Jesus lowered his hands and looked upon them one by one. "You have heard," he said, "that it was said, an eye for an eye. But I tell you, resist not the one who does evil. If any strike you on the right cheek, turn to them the other also." The crowd shifted again, for they sensed that the next teaching would test the soul's deepest courage. The courage not to retaliate, but to forgive. And after a pause that felt like the long breath before dawn, Jesus said again, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist the one who does evil. If anyone strikes you upon the right cheek, turn to them the other also." The hillside was still. The people exchanged uncertain glances, for the command cut against the grain of all they had known, against fear, against pride, against the law of survival itself. Yet in his voice there was neither weakness nor surrender, only peace so firm it could not be shaken. He continued, "And if anyone sues you to take your cloak, give them your coat also. And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. The words fell gently, but they carried a force greater than any sword. "Give to the one who asks of you," he said, "and from the one who would borrow, turn not away." Those who listened began to feel that this was not instruction for safety, but for transformation, a path where hatred could find no root. Jesus looked upon them, his gaze deep and tender. "Do not meet violence with violence," he said, "for the world's anger multiplies upon itself. Only love can break its chain. If you answer cruelty with peace, you will reveal heaven's strength upon the earth." A young man near the edge of the crowd clenched his fists. His brother had been wronged by a Roman guard, and vengeance burned like coal within him. He whispered, "Lord, how can I bear injustice and not fight back?" Jesus turned toward him, as though the question had been spoken aloud. "To endure with faith is not to yield to evil," he said softly. "It is to refuse its likeness. When you choose peace, you do not become its victim, you become its conqueror." The young man bowed his head and wept, for something greater than anger stirred within him, a strength he had never known, quiet and unshakable as the sea. "The Father," said Jesus, "does not repay injury with injury, yet his justice stands forever. Be therefore like him. Let your mercy reveal his might, for each act of patience is a seed of peace sown into eternity." He turned his face to the west, where the light was thinning, and spoke once more. "You have heard it said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven." At this, a murmur rose among the people. Wonder, disbelief, even grief. To love the enemy was more than most hearts could bear. Yet his face shone with calm assurance, and none could doubt that he himself would live these words to the end. "For the Father," he said, "makes his sun rise upon the evil and the good, and sends rain upon the just and the unjust. If you love those who love you, what reward have you? Even the tax collectors do the same. And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Be therefore perfect, complete, as your Father in heaven is complete." The sound of his voice fell like a slow tide, washing over the gathering. They understood then that love was not given because it was deserved, but because it was divine. The love he spoke of was not feeling, but faith, a steadfast choosing of good where none seemed deserved. He said no more for a time, and the people felt the weight of his words settle deep. They could almost see how such love might heal the earth, though the cost of it was great. A woman whispered, "Who can love so?" And an old man beside her answered, "Only one who sees as he sees." And in that moment, they understood why he was called the Son. For his mercy mirrored the Father's heart. The twilight thickened, and the mountain grew soft with shadow. Jesus lifted his hands as though blessing both the living and the lost. "Let the heart that forgives shine brighter than the wound that made it," he said. "Let love be your defense and peace your banner. Then will you be children of God indeed." The sea below caught the last glimmer of light, and the wind turned gentle once again. The people felt both humbled and lifted, for the words had undone the boundaries of their hearts. And when silence fell, it was deep and holy, the stillness of souls who had glimpsed the kingdom within themselves. And when the silence had gathered like night around the hill, Jesus lifted his eyes once more and said, "Take heed that you do not perform your righteousness before others to be seen by them. For if you do, you have received your reward already." The people listened, still trembling from the command to love their enemies. Now the teacher turned their gaze inward again, from the great command of love to the quiet secret of faith. His tone was not stern, but sorrowful, as one who longed to protect a sacred flame from the wind. "When you give," he said, "do not sound a trumpet before you, as the proud do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be honored by men. Truly, they have their reward. But when you give, let your left hand not know what your right hand is doing. Give in secret, and your Father, who sees in secret, will reward you openly." The crowd stirred. They had seen such acts. The coins dropped loudly, the pious faces lifted for notice. But he spoke of something gentler, of goodness that blooms unseen, fragrant only to God. He continued, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, who love to stand and be heard for their many words. They pray to be admired, not to be changed. Truly, I tell you, they have their reward. But when you pray, go into your room, shut the door, and pray to your Father in secret. And your Father, who sees in secret, will hear." His voice fell to a whisper, and the hillside grew still. "Do not heap up empty phrases as those who think they will be heard for their length. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him." He lifted his face heavenward, and for a moment the people felt as though the very air had turned to light. Then, in the stillness, he spoke words that sounded as ancient as creation itself. "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen." When he finished, none spoke. It was as though the prayer had filled all space, every word resting perfectly in the heart. They had prayed with him, though they did not realize when they began. Jesus looked upon them and said, "If you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will forgive you also. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses." The people bowed their heads. Forgiveness again. Always forgiveness. Yet now they felt its depth more clearly. It was the bridge by which the heart crossed into the presence of God. "And when you fast," he said, "do not make your face sorrowful as the actors do, who disfigure their countenance so that all may know they suffer. Truly, they have their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that none may see your sacrifice but your Father, and the Father who sees in secret will reward you." His words wove through them like quiet fire, cleansing, renewing, lifting away the weight of pretense. They saw that what he offered was not merely obedience, but intimacy, a way to walk with God in hidden places. A woman whispered to her child, "He teaches us to be unseen." And the boy, still gazing at the teacher, said, "Yet I see him." The teacher smiled faintly, as though he had heard. Then his tone deepened once more, carrying a warmth that filled the fading day. "Do not store up treasures upon the earth," he said, "where moth and rust destroy, and thieves break in and steal. But lay up treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust corrupts, and where thieves cannot enter. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." The crowd fell silent again, for his words touched something within them. The secret hunger they had never named, the longing for permanence in a world of loss. And Jesus, seeing their faces, added softly, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is clear, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is clouded, the whole body is in darkness. Therefore, keep your sight upon what endures." The wind stirred gently, carrying the scent of salt and soil. The stars were beginning to rise. "You cannot serve two masters," he said. "You cannot serve both God and wealth, for one will hold your heart, and the other will fade away." The people breathed deeply, for his words struck close to home. And yet, beneath the weight of his truth, they felt no condemnation, only the quiet call to choose what matters most. And the teacher, gazing at the dimming sky, said softly, "Let your treasure be light, your prayer secret, your love unseen but alive, for these are the riches of the kingdom." The night grew full of stars, and the mountains shone with their gentle fire. And Jesus, seeing that the night had deepened, and the people's hearts were quiet, spoke again, "Do not be anxious for your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor for your body, what you shall wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing?" The wind stirred among the reeds, carrying his voice across the hillside. "Look at the birds of the air," he said, "for they neither sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they?" The people lifted their eyes and saw swallows gliding through the fading light, their wings catching the last gold of day. And they felt the truth of his words without need for argument, that the world itself breathed under a care older than fear. He continued, "Which of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to his life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." His words moved like music, gentle, rhythmic, and full of trust. "If God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith?" Among the crowd, a mother drew her children close. Her hands were rough from work, her garments thin from use. Yet as she listened, her worry loosened its grip. She felt her breath slow, her heart quiet, as though she, too, had been clothed in the peace he spoke. "Therefore," he said, "do not say, 'What shall we eat?' or 'What shall we drink?' or What shall we wear? For your Father knows that you need all these things. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." He paused, the silence between his words filling with the soft hum of the world around them, the whisper of grass, the murmur of the sea. "Do not worry about tomorrow," he said, "for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." The people listened, and they felt their burdens lighten. It was not that their troubles vanished, but that something stronger had entered their hearts, a trust that steadied them like the roots of trees in the wind. Then Jesus spoke again, his tone now turning inward, toward the secret judgments that dwell in the mind. "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." He looked across the faces before him, seeing both the proud and the penitent. "Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye?" he said, "but do not notice the beam in your own? First remove the beam from your own eye, and then you shall see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's." His words were sharp but healing, not to wound, but to awaken. The people felt their pride shrink and their mercy deepen. They began to see that the kingdom he spoke of could not live in the heart that condemns, but only in the heart that forgives. A man whispered, "Then how shall we correct what is wrong?" Jesus answered, "With humility, not with hatred, with tears, not with stones. The heart that has been forgiven will forgive." He lifted his gaze to the darkening sky. "Ask," he said, "and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened. For everyone who asks receives, and to the one who seeks it is found." His voice was like the sound of a door gently opening. "If your child asks for bread, will you give him a stone? Or if he asks for fish, will you give a serpent? If you, though imperfect, know how to give good gifts, how much more will your Father in heaven give to those who ask him?" The people felt the closeness of God as never before, not distant, not hidden behind ritual, but near, like the breath in their lungs. "Therefore," he said, "whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. For this is the law and the prophets." And with those words, he joined all commandments into one thread. Mercy woven into action, compassion made visible. The stars now shimmered like lamps across the darkened sky. Jesus looked upon the crowd and said softly, "Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many walk it. But narrow is the gate, and difficult the way that leads to life, and few find it." The people bowed their heads. They felt both the weight and the beauty of his words, the call to walk not in comfort, but in truth. And when he fell silent, the night itself seemed to listen. The narrow way stretched before them, unseen yet already opening within their hearts. And Jesus said, "Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many walk upon it. But narrow is the gate, and straight the way that leads to life, and few there are who find it." The air grew still. His words moved like wind through unseen grass, gentle, yet full of warning. Those who listened understood that he spoke not of roads made by men, but of paths within the soul. The wide way was ease, pride, and self. The narrow way, surrender and love. He turned his eyes toward the horizon, where the sea met the darkening sky, and said, "Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. The people murmured softly, and he lifted a hand to quiet them. Do men gather grapes from thorns, or figs from thistles? So every good tree bears good fruit, but a corrupt tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, nor can an evil tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and cast into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you shall know them. The crowd listened with solemn faces. They began to see that he was speaking not only of teachers but of themselves, that every soul was a tree, and its deeds the harvest of its roots. A man whispered, How shall we keep our fruit good? Jesus answered, Let your heart abide in love, for love is the root of all righteousness. If the root is holy, the fruit will be sweet. He paused, and the sea's distant rhythm filled the silence. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, he said, but only those who do the will of my Father. Many will say to me in that day, Have we not spoken in your name and done great works? And I will say to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who work iniquity. The people felt a tremor in their hearts, for the teacher spoke not against worship, but against pride, against those who used holiness as a cloak for vanity. The path of heaven was not paved with words or wonders, but with obedience born of love. Jesus' voice softened. The Father's will is mercy. Walk in it, and you will find the narrow way made wide enough for your feet. He stepped forward then, looking into the faces of those who sat close. Whoever hears these words of mine and does them, he said, is like a wise man who built his house upon a rock. The rain came down, the floods rose, the winds blew and beat upon that house, yet it did not fall, for it was founded upon the rock. He drew a breath and looked toward the shadows below the hill. But everyone who hears these words and does not do them is like a foolish man who built his house upon the sand. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. The people listened, and the image took root in them. They saw the houses, one standing, one broken, and understood that the difference was not in the storm, but in the foundation. A woman whispered, Lord, what is the rock? And Jesus answered, To love the Father and to do his will. To hear these words not as sound, but as life. Whoever lives them stands unshaken, though all the world crumble. And as he spoke, the night deepened, and the stars shone more brightly, as though heaven itself bore witness. The crowd sat long in silence, their hearts both comforted and pierced. For they saw that the narrow gate was not far, it was within them. It was the small, steady choice of love over anger, faith over fear, forgiveness over blame. Jesus looked upon them, and his voice turned soft again. Do not fear the narrow way. The Father walks it with you. Each step taken in truth widens it until it becomes the road of joy. He looked then at the smallest of the children who sat near his feet. Even a child may walk it, he said, for the gate is low, and only the humble may pass. The people bowed their heads, and many prayed in silence. Some wept, not from despair, but from the longing to begin again. And Jesus, seeing their tears, smiled, the gentle smile of one who knows that hearts have turned toward home. He said quietly, Those who hear and live these words dwell already in the kingdom. Their house stands upon the rock, and the storms shall not overthrow it. And the wind, soft as breath, passed over them all, carrying the scent of the sea and the promise of dawn. And after he had spoken of the narrow way and of the house upon the rock, Jesus lifted his eyes once more to the stars. The night was deep, and the air was cool upon the mountain. The multitude had not gone away. They waited still, drawn by the quiet in his presence. Then he said to them, "Take heed that your hearts be not proud in the sight of others, for the Father, who sees in secret, delights in humility." He sat upon a stone, and his hands rested gently upon his knees. "When you do good," he said, "let it be between your soul and the Father. The world may never see, yet heaven will remember. When you forgive, do not tell it aloud. When you pray, speak softly, for he who loves you is already near." His eyes moved from face to face, and many felt seen as if for the first time. There was no judgment in his gaze, only a light that revealed without wounding. "Be not as those who gather treasures and store them away," he said, "for the treasures of this world perish. Seek instead the treasure that endures, peace of conscience, mercy freely given, faith that does not falter, and the joy of the Spirit. These are the riches the thief cannot steal." Then he told them of the heart's two masters again, for he saw how easily fear divides the soul. "No one can serve two masters," he said. "You cannot serve both God and wealth. You cannot love both the eternal and the fleeting. For what you cling to will shape you, and what you love will lead you home." The wind shifted, carrying the sound of distant waves. The people drew their cloaks close, listening. "Be not anxious," he continued, "for the Father knows what you need. Look at the birds. They neither sow nor reap, yet they are fed. Look at the lilies. They do not toil, yet they are clothed in splendor greater than kings. If the Father so tends to these, how much more to you, his children?" He smiled faintly then, and the people's hearts lifted. The words wrapped around them like a mantle of rest. A fisherman raised his voice from among the crowd. "Teacher," he said, "how shall we pray when the heart is troubled, when we cannot find words?" Jesus turned toward him, and his voice grew soft as breath. "When you are troubled, say only this: 'Father, I am yours.' And the Father, who knows every sorrow, will answer with peace. For prayer is not many words, but an open heart." He lifted his face toward the heavens, where the first trace of moonlight touched the clouds. "The Father is near to the broken and the quiet. He is found not in thunder, but in stillness. Whoever enters the secret place of the heart will find him there." The multitude fell silent, each soul hearing in his words a call that spoke differently. To one, forgiveness; to another, courage; to another still, surrender. It was as though his teaching reached each heart at the place of its deepest need. Then he said, "Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, for where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. The lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is clear, your whole body is filled with light. But if your eye is darkened by greed or fear, how great is that darkness within?" He looked into the distance and said, "The Father's kingdom is not far. It is among you. It is within you. The heart that loves without measure already walks in it." And there arose in the crowd a hush deeper than before. It was not only silence, but awe. The stillness of those who sense the veil between heaven and earth has grown thin. A child near the front whispered, "Is heaven here, Lord?" And Jesus answered, smiling, "Where love abides, heaven is already come." He rose then and stretched his hand toward the sea below. "The storms will come," he said, "but fear not. The house built upon mercy will not fall. The heart that trusts in the Father will stand when all else fades." The crowd's eyes followed his hand, and they felt as though they, too, had been lifted toward that unseen horizon. Jesus lowered his arm, and his words grew gentle again. "Judge not," he said, "and you will not be judged. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given to you. Full measure, pressed down, running over. For the Father delights in the generous heart." And as he spoke, they felt that his teaching was no longer something to be remembered, but something to be lived. Not law upon parchment, but breath within the soul. The night deepened around them, and the light upon his face seemed its own radiance. He said one final thing before resting his voice. "The kingdom of God is not built with hands, nor does it fall with empires. It grows wherever a heart chooses love." And those who heard these words knew that the sermon was nearly complete. Only one teaching remained, the final turning of the heart toward its truest treasure, the meeting place of heaven and the soul. The dawn began to breathe upon the horizon, and the faintest silver spread across the sea. The faces of the people glowed in its quiet light, and Jesus stood among them, calm as the morning itself. His robe stirred softly in the wind. When he spoke, his words carried both the gentleness of peace and the weight of final truth. "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth," he said again, "where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where nothing fades and no thief may enter. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." The people listened with still hearts. They thought of the coins buried in their homes, of the possessions guarded in fear, of the years spent gathering what could never last. And they knew, though the lesson was hard, that he spoke of freedom, not loss. Jesus continued, "No one can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and wealth. You will love one and despise the other. Therefore be free. Let your trust be in the Father, who clothes the lilies and feeds the birds." He looked upon them with tenderness. "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you." Then his gaze turned toward the sea, where the light was brightening. "The eye," he said, "is the lamp of the body. If your eye is clear, your whole body is full of light. But if your eye is clouded, the darkness within becomes great indeed. Therefore, keep your sight upon heaven, and you shall walk in the light." He paused, and a hush moved through the crowd like a tide drawing breath. "No one who seeks heaven loses anything that matters," he said, "for all that is given in love is already gathered into eternity." The people watched him, their eyes full of reverence. He spoke no longer as one who taught, but as one who was about to depart, not from the mountain, but toward the mystery for which he was born. He lifted his hands and said, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you again. Give, and it shall be given to you. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven." The Father delights in the merciful, and his joy dwells with the meek. The wind stirred once more, bringing with it the scent of the sea and of earth warmed by early light. "Enter through the narrow gate," he said, "for wide is the gate that leads to ruin, and many walk its road. But narrow is the gate that leads to life, and few find it. Yet to those who seek, it shall be opened." His words were no longer many, but each one seemed to carry the depth of all that had come before. Mercy, purity, hunger for righteousness, peace, forgiveness, love. It was as though the whole mountain breathed with his teaching. He turned to those who sat closest to him, the fishermen, the mothers, the weary, the young, and said, "You are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others, that they may see and give glory to your Father in heaven. For light is never wasted when it shines in love." He looked upon them once more, and in his eyes was both promise and farewell. "Build your house upon the rock," he said, "for storms will come and winds will rise, but the foundation of faith will not fail. The one who hears these words and lives them shall stand unshaken." The people bowed their heads. Some wept, though they did not know why. It was as if heaven itself had drawn near enough to touch. Jesus lowered his hands, and the mountain grew very still. Then he said, "Ask, and it shall be given. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened. For everyone who asks receives, and the Father withholds nothing from those who love him." A child's voice called softly from the crowd, "Teacher, where will you go now?" He looked down and smiled. "I go where the Father leads," he said. "But the word you have heard will remain with you. Keep it, live it, and it shall be life within you." The light rose higher upon his face, and those who saw it said later that it was as though the dawn itself had rested upon him. The birds began to sing, and the mountain glowed with the new day. He said one final thing before stepping down from the stone. "Blessed are they who hear these words and do them, for they shall be children of God, and their hearts shall be the dwelling of peace." And when he had spoken, the crowd remained seated, not moving, not speaking. For something greater than understanding had come upon them, a peace that lingered, soft and holy, like light after prayer. The teacher walked slowly down the hillside, and none followed with noise or question. They watched him go, the hem of his robe brushing the grass, until he was among the trees below. And still, the mountain held his voice, the sound of blessing, mercy, and truth, echoing through the hearts of all who had heard. The morning lay gentle upon the land. The sea shimmered beneath the light, and the air carried the hush of sacred memory. The people who had listened to him lingered where they sat, their faces touched by the dawn. They did not speak. There was nothing left to say. The words of Jesus had taken root in them, like seed in good soil, unseen, but already alive. The wind moved softly through the grass where he had stood. It seemed to whisper the blessings once more. The poor in spirit, the mourners, the meek, the merciful, the pure, the peacemakers, and those who remembered them felt within their hearts the same still joy that had filled the mountain. The world below went on. The nets were drawn, the markets opened, the fields awoke. Yet upon that hill, heaven had touched the earth. The echo of his voice remained, timeless as the tide, carrying the promise of the kingdom, that those who seek love will find it, and those who walk in peace shall never walk alone.